Shalom, everyone. I'm Rabbi Stuart Dowerman from Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges where history builds walls. Today, I'd like to build a bridge between you and the Torah and the story of Jacob's ladder. So let's take a look at this story and see what we can learn. The question we want to look at is, where is the starting place for encountering God? We read in Bereshit, Genesis 28, that Yaakov, that is Jacob, went out from Beersheba and he traveled toward Haran, which was where his family had originally come from. He came to a certain place and stayed the night there because the sun had set. He took a stone from the place, put it under his head, and lay down there to sleep. He dreamt that there before him was a ladder resting on the ground with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of Adonai were going up and coming down on it. Then suddenly Adonai was standing there next to him, and he said, I am Adonai, the God of Abraham, your grandfather, and the God of Yitzchak. The land on which you are lying I will give to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the grains of dust on the earth. You will expand to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. By you and your descendants, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Look, I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go, and I will bring you back into this land because I won't leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Yaakov awoke from his sleep and he said, Truly, Adonai is in this place, and I didn't know it. Then he became afraid, and he said, This place is fearsome. This has to be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. What is the significance of the angels going up and down on the ladder rather than down and up? You would think, when you think angels, they start from above. So wouldn't it be going down and then going back up? What's the significance of them going up and down? Jewish tradition suggests that this was a holy place, Mount Moriah, where Abraham had sacrificed Yitzchak and where the temple would be built. And maybe the angels were there, rooted there in this very holy place and went up to heaven, I don't know. Or perhaps the dream was a reminder of Sinai, because the word for a ladder is sulam, and it's got the same numerical value as Sinai, Mount Sinai, and maybe this was a especially holy place, and maybe the ladder symbolized Sinai. We don't know. I suggest that the vision was a metaphor of what was happening to Yaakov, which all of us would do well to seek and to value and to protect. For Jacob, as for us, the meeting place with God is the same. We want to learn from this. Jacob came to a place where he met with God. We need to come to the same place to encounter God. What do I mean? Well, I mean that if we don't encounter God in this place, we will miss him. What is that place? That place is where we are now. You can only encounter God in the place where you are. God must first come to us. Yeshua said of himself, he said, no one can come to me unless the Father draw him. And the people of God for centuries have reminded us that God is previous, that he is the one who comes and draws us to himself. So first, God must come to us. And then we must in some way encounter the promises of God. This is what happens with Yaakov in our story. Adonai is standing next to him, and he repeats promises that he had made to Abraham and to Isaac, to his grandfather and his father, and he expands upon them. And Yitzchak, Yaakov, Jacob, encounters the promises of God. And we, like he, must in some way realize they apply to us. Before that, These promises were the promises of the God of his father and of his grandfather. At this incident, they become his promises too, in a very existential way. And we must in some way recognize that the promises of God apply to us. God will come to us in the here and in the now, and he'll cause us to encounter in some way his promises and to recognize that in some way they apply to us. This will cause us to do exactly what happened with Jacob. First, it'll cause us to wake up, to realize that we have been spiritually asleep. I don't mean to be insulting, but most of us stumble through life spiritually sleepwalking. But when we have this kind of encounter with God, we wake up and we realize that we've been spiritually asleep. And we choose to stay awake to the possibilities of encounter. When you have this kind of encounter, it wakes you up and you never want to go back to sleep again. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, of blessed memory, said this: normal consciousness is a state of stupor in which the sensibility to the wholly real and responsiveness to the stimuli of the spirit are reduced. The mystics, and I would say also the prophets, knowing that man is involved in a hidden history of the cosmos, endeavor to awake from the drowsiness and apathy and to regain the state of wakefulness for their enchanted souls. Nobody spoke like Heschel. And he says what the text says to us, that when we have this kind of encounter, we wake up and we realize we've been asleep in the light, as Keith Green would say. We must treat such a chain of experiences as a milestone. After the passage we read here, Jacob pours oil on this stone that he had been sleeping on, and he marks this as a milestone. He marks it as a shrine. We too must treat such a chain of experiences as a milestone. We should mark the occasion, and we should take it as an opportunity to enter into an interactive relationship with God. What Jacob does after this is he says to God, well, if I go to my father's home, my ancestors' home in peace, and if you bring me back in peace, then I will give a tenth to you. He goes into a transaction with God. Now, Jacob is a very transactional man, and he enters into a transaction with God. He enters into an interactive relationship with him, and in the passage of time, he will grow in the knowledge of himself, and we will grow in the knowledge of God and of ourselves. Jacob will come back 20 years later to that place, and he's not going to make any deals with God. He's going to plead with God. Here, 20 years earlier, he's trying to use leverage with God. If you'll do this and you'll do that, then I'll do this and I'll do this. Later on, when he comes back, he has grown in his knowledge of himself, and he's grown in his relationship with God. And he doesn't try to bargain. But at least here, he's trying to have an interactive relationship with God. And that's a good place to begin. Let's look at another story from the Parashat. This is from Yochanan, from John chapter 1. Yeshua saw Nathanael coming toward him and remarked about him. Here's a true son of Israel, nothing false in him. Nathanael said to him, how do you know me? Yeshua answered him, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. Now, apparently something very significant had happened under that fig tree. Maybe Nathanael was praying about Yeshua, praying about the things of God. It was a significant time. And when Yeshua says, look, before Philip called you, when you were under that fig tree, I saw you. Nathanael said, Rabbi, you're the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Yeshua answered him, you believe all of this just because I told you I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than that. Then he said to him, yes, indeed. I tell you that you will see heaven opened and the angels of God going up and coming down on the Son of Man. He's alluding to this experience of Jacob's many years before. What is the connection? Here it is. For those who would hasten and deepen their encounter with God, Yeshua presents himself as the ultimate place where we will encounter the invisible realm, as Jacob encountered the angels and God himself, where we will encounter the promises of God as Jacob did, and will encounter those promises as applied to us as Jacob did, and where we will wake up to new possibilities in our life with God. Yeshua is the ultimate meeting place where these things are catalyzed. So let's look, in conclusion, at an instructive story from our tradition. Apparently, the bottom of the sea, though safe to walk on, was not completely dry, but a little muddy, like a beach at low tide. Ruvain stepped into it and curled his lip. What is this muck? Shimon scowled. There's mud all over the place. This is just like the slime pits of Egypt, replied Ruvain. What's the difference, complained Shimon. Mud here, mud there, it's all the same. And so it went for the two of them, grumbling all the way across the bottom of the sea. And because they never once looked up, they never understood why, on the distant shore, everyone was singing songs of praise. For Ruvain and Shimon, the miracle never happened. Of course, this is about the crossing of the Red Sea. What's the point of this story? The point is that it's easy for us to distract ourselves with the mundane, to distract ourselves, especially with complaints about life. And meanwhile, the miraculous, the ineffable, the numinous, the divine is available to us, but we're so preoccupied with other stuff that we're unavailable for it. So let's be like Jacob. Let's wake up. Let's encounter God. And let's go on transformed. This is Rabbi Stuart Darman from Interfaithfulness, where we're building bridges where history builds walls. May God continue to build bridges in your life between himself and yourself. And may you walk across that bridge. Shalom.